Welcome to a Father's Flame podcast today. This is going to be a great episode. Today, I want to introduce Chris Borghese. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Oh man, this is just a blessing to be able to be here today. And thank you, Jeff, for allowing me the opportunity. This is anytime we can get the message out to help men be able to connect with their wives, it's always a powerful thing. So thank you.
Well, that's what I love what you're doing. Like you're building and nurturing marriages, right? Because we all need help, and we need. I always say new skills. Like we're not born with the skills. We need that
Yeah.
skill that we got to learn to have better marriages. So, Chris, you're the CEO and co-founder of the Marriage Revolution and a certified relationship and behavioral consultant and ordained pastor, right?
Yeah.
So, why don't you tell us really what you're up to these days, and tell us more about the Marriage Revelation.
Well, thank you for noticing all that. So we have been in the space of the marriages for because of Tara and I had an issue. My wife Tara, we got in the space about 18 years ago, but the first 10 years it was not good. It was not healthy, and so we were on a journey of being able to understand how do we connect because we almost called it quits at the 10-year mark. In fact, Um, I had a road to Damascus experience. I already told her um, her sister that because we live in the same subdivision. I'd walked over to her sister's house and told my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, that it was over. Like this marriage is done.
Wow.
And so on that trip home, I walk home from her house to our house. God intervened uh, to me, for our family, and He told me two things. Number one, you're not going to let Satan win this.
Mm.
I gave you a beautiful wife. I have three beautiful children, and the thought of someone else raising them just you're going to have to fight for your family. Fight for your family. That was the first thing. The second thing, what got us in, what caught me was the fact that I was sacrificing my family on the altar of success for 10 years. I worked really hard to work my way up the corporate ladder. I was an executive for a company and I traveled 3 to 4 weeks out of the month. And during that time, my wife was having an emotional affair. Now, we didn't know what it was called, but what the Lord told me was that I pushed her in the arms of another man. Now, yes, she had responsibility and all that, but I had to take responsibility for my piece of it. And this is what I'm on the journey. This is my mission in life is to be able to help guys to say, hey, look, we can't sacrifice our families on the altar of success, and there's got to be a balance here because women need both, need provision, because I was thinking I was doing the right thing, as the
Yeah.
Bible says, right? You provide for your family, provide. So I was doing that, but I was sacrificing them emotionally, and we have to do both. We have a tall order, but with God all things are possible.
I love that you're pushing hope. You're pushing that, hey, it's possible, right? Because I know there's going to be guys listening to this. They're like, I'm doing that. I'm working overtime. I'm traveling. I'm trying to provide, right? And I feel
Mhm.
like I've done the same thing, where it's like the money kind of blinds you, and it's like
Yeah.
it 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 elevates in some fashion where it's almost like everything else starts serving that, and it's like it's getting out of place.
Yeah.
So
It's a
where,
thing I call, letting life live us,
hmm,
rather than us living life. It's life, guys. Let's just be real. It's like life catches up with us. The house, the cars, the bills, the all these things just catch up with us. But we got to be aware. We have a saying: unless you're aware of something, you're not going to be aware of it. It's like a detour sign. When you're driving and a detour sign says, "Hey, the bridge is out up front." We have two choices. We can either take the detour and be aware of it, or we can just plow through and go over the edge and let the bridge is out and then fall to impending danger. Those are our two choices, and that's where most guys are, and their wives are crying out, they're calling out, they're saying, there's something wrong here. But here's the deal. Most women, now get this, you're not going to miss this. Most women love Jesus more than they hate their marriage. They'll
Mm,
stay in it. They'll stay in it and they'll be silent for a period of time until they're not. And that's when we get the phone call. We get the phone call, but normally it's too late. It's normally too late. The wife's been crying, screaming out for remedies, or we got to get help. We got to get help, and the guy wants to keep their money in their pocket. And no, relationships are a chick thing. I'm a hunter, and I grunt, and I know this is how I'm. That's how I'm wired. God made me man. I'm a man, and so because of that, we're not hearing our wives, and then they become silent.
mm.
And that is when you really need to be careful, because that's where I have most of my clients are men who their wives have now left them. And there's no guarantee they're ever going to come back. But I say this a lot. We don't have a marital problem. We have a personal development issue. And so the sooner we can get ahead of that curve, the less pain we're going to have, in hopes that our family comes back to us. And that's where I am working with some guys right now.
Man, I like what you're saying. So we have a personal development issue. Like, so what are, I mean, there's got to be just really common threads that you're seeing amongst men. Like, what are we missing? Like,
Yeah. And I can't thank you enough for having me on here, Jeff. This is
yeah,
so good. Because the more times that men hear this message, the more they won't fall in the same trap I did. It
yeah,
talks about in Proverbs, when you learn from your mistakes yourself, you're a fool. When you learn from the mistakes of others, you're wise. So don't make the same mistakes I did. I almost lost it all. I almost lost my family. In fact, I had made the decision. It was over. I made that decision until God intervened. So, what are we missing? There's a few things we're missing. We don't understand. Most guys, now, I'm not saying all, I don't want to pigeonhole anyone. I don't want to put them in a box, but most guys we're more task driven, right? We want to get things done.
mm,
And our women, our wives are more, people oriented. They keep our homes warm and kind and friendly, or they're very outgoing. And so because of that, that right there is 80 to 90% of the issue. We're here on guys where what we hear a lot is the fact that we're logical, and that the woman is being illogical with her feelings. That's what you're saying, is just, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't, because we haven't taken the time, and this is where we're missing it. This is where I missed it, is that we're not hearing our wives. God has made a man and a woman, or however personality. 90% of all marriages, we marry the exact opposite. And we do that not because, look, I want to marry someone opposite of me, right? It just naturally is that way. Like Tara was attracted to me because I was, outgoing, I was fun, had large social circle. I was a pastor, and I was preaching, and I had power and strength. She was more reserved. She was more quiet, more understanding. And so because of that, we both were attracted. Man, she can make a great wife. She loves children. She'll be a great wife. And he was like, oh, and he'll make a great husband. So we don't knowingly, like, I'm gonna marry the opposite. That's what happens in 90% of all couples. And so then what happens is that first year, there's a lot of love, and we can work through a lot of stuff. We don't, all the premarital counseling we did, or coaching, it's like, it's okay, but I got love. Love is going to bring perfect alignment. And until it doesn't, until the wife says, man, a couple kids come along, and then all of a sudden there's this gap. I don't, I don't know if I like you anymore because you're so different than me. And most couples will come to a point in life where they say, what I was attracted to, either one, I'm no longer attracted to. And here we have a saying: when you don't understand something, now get this, when you don't understand something or someone, you'll spend the rest of your life trying to fix it, trying to change it, judge it, and eventually discard it.
hmm.
Phew.
Wow.
This is what happens to most couples. And so what happens to the guy is like, what? Like I'll talk to these couples on a story. And the gal would say, I would leave this guy if it wasn't for Jesus. I love God more than I hate my marriage. So they stick in it. They're in it. They're in it. They want to win it, but like they've given up hope. My husband's never going to change. And so you talk to the guy, and the husbands will say, "What? I got a great marriage. What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Have you talked to your wife?" And what
Wow.
happens is with most people is that, or most couples, is that the woman is afraid to speak up because they don't like confrontation. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to, they see the provider, like, what am I going to do with my life? While this guy's making money and providing for everything, I'm here taking care of two, three kids, and I got throw up on me. And it's like, who am I or what am I going to say? Like, if he kicks me out or we don't get along, what am I going to do? I have no, I don't have skills. Now, remember, there can be vice versa. The men could be the same situation. Like
Yeah.
for us, I was the more outgoing. Tara was the more reserved. So for us, it's a little bit different, but still, nonetheless, we're totally opposite. And this is where most guys are missing it, is the fact that we're not getting the skill set, like you said, Jeff, so eloquently. Like we're not exploring the skill set to be able to connect. And that is what's happened. We were designed to complete, not compete with each other. And a lot of times couples just like, well, if she would just be more logical, we would get along. And she would be saying, well, if you weren't just so mean and so angry all the time, we'd get along. And so there it is. When we don't understand something, we're going to try and fix it, or we're going to, not understand it because we're trying to change it, or the other word, we're going to judge it. Like you're so mean or you're so illogical, so we judge it. And so when we understand that, and that's what we do, we help people understand the differences between themselves. That's different. That how I'm wired, how they're wired, and then how to connect. So that's really what we're doing. Now you'd ask the question, what are we up to? So we're actually changing our model a little bit. We're talking to couples, of course, but we're doing it now through the church.
Hmm.
Um, like you said, we're Tara and I are ordained pastors, my wife, and so after we worked through our issues 20 years ago, so now we're at a church called City Reach in Austin, Texas, or in Cedar Park, and we're the Next Steps pastors, and so eventually the marriage and family and all that. But suffice it to say, we are now taking our curriculum that we've created with our partner, business partner. Uh, He's taught Zig Ziglar, has taught John Maxwell. He has
Wow.
been all over the world, and he's in business with us. And so we're taking some of his curriculum, most of it, and some of ours, and we're combining it. And so now we're going to the churches to be able to help them be able to have great marriages. Because, um, like I said, most women, and especially in a church, they're going to just like be silent.
Mm.
They're gonna be okay with it. They don't know any better. They don't know any different. I guess he's just gonna be the way he is, and he's gonna be short and angry, or maybe a turtle where he becomes reclusive and doesn't talk. Something's gonna give. So that's where most couples are who don't talk or don't have good healthy marriages. So that's what we're doing.
Interesting. So, are you guys seeing, like, even amongst the church, that divorce rates are still kind of up there?
Yeah, they're up there, but more in the church, there's more of a, I'm going to stick with this because I
Okay.
love Jesus more than I hate my marriage, and so they realize they've taken responsibility of the fact they married, so it's a little bit less, but it's still there. But if you could put a thermometer or something, a barometer, to be able to judge unhappiness in a marriage, like do a poll, like what we've done,
Mm.
uh, it's for the church. It's astronomical. It's astronomical. It's much greater than the divorce rate at 50%, which most divorces, 1 out of 2 end in divorce. The second marriage is 62%. The third marriage is 73%.
Wow.
So there's a common denominator. But within the church, what we're finding is that even at the 63, 70% rate, it's unhappiness. And those are the honest ones.
Sure.
Those are the ones who are saying, well, are you sure your survey is anonymous? So they won't come clean, but that's okay. It's I understand. It's like there's a lot riding on this. We made a commitment. We made a vow. I will till death do us part, till sickness and health, and richer or poor. And so, a lot of women are like, I'm going to do this. And so we're finding that's the unhappiness that most are at. And so the key there is having the guy realize and hear his wife, hear his wife hear him, and once they connect like that and hear each other, then the magic can happen and the happiness comes. Well, the unhappiness factor will come down for sure.
So good. I like that you guys are going to the churches. It sounds like this is like a way to scale instead
Yeah,
of, you could only meet with so many people, right?
yeah,
Um, and I
you have to be
think
too
this is,
wise.
yeah, I think this is like, well, just literally like this last week, I had this thought. I'm like, because I'm in a small group and we're all sharing our testimonies, and it's like
Mhm.
a lot of times in the testimony, there's always that struggle in the marriage, and it's like that fork in the road. They make it or they don't, and they get
Yeah,
whatever, and it's like how much of the church should the church really be that anchor source to really call men out, right? And we should be teaching, like we have the best teaching, I think, of like how to
mhm,
serve and love our wives and walk in wisdom. But we all are going to church with people, and even maybe it's ourselves that we're not loving our wives at home, we're not
yeah,
loving our kids at home. Like it's this facade that gets put on, and you think things are okay, but you got no clue, like you're saying, what
yeah,
your wife's going through, and you're the one that's causing it. So
hmm,
like it seems like the charge has to happen, like with a lot of things, with
yeah,
men have to wake up,
yeah,
take responsibility.
yeah,
So how do you um how are you going to wake up men, right, to even hear
yeah,
the message? Because I'm sure a lot of guys are just like, that must be
yeah.
that guy, not me. It can't be me.
That's right. We suffer from either Adam syndrome. They blame their wives, or the wives blame the man. And see, this is why we don't believe in couples counseling or
Ooh,
coaching,
interesting.
because it becomes a fisticuff. Well, it becomes then, he said, she said, and we don't want any of that. So I'll work with the guys, and Tara will work with the gals, and it really is a personal development issue. But it's the same issue that I had at the 10-year mark. I'm rising up the corporate ladder until there was pain. We're not, until people wake up to say there's two ways people can wake up. Either the pain of losing something, right? Or being able to say, okay, I don't want to be in that fear, the fear of I don't want to be in that same situation that Chris was in. And so what we're finding is that when couples can you have a much now listen to guys, you have a much better chance of survival if you can get this at the front of the pass rather than after. Because once the woman leaves, once the woman is silent, um, that's when the red flag should come up. You don't know if they're going to ever come back or they're going to return. So what we try to do is to educate and to warn and to help men understand that you don't have to, you know, it says in Proverbs again that a wise man will learn from the mistakes of others, but a fool will make their own. And so,
Hmm.
that's where we don't want to go through what Chris went through. Thankfully, Tara responded after 3 months of dead silence. I did not know for 3 months if she was going to come back to me. I'd pushed her in the arms of the man. And so she didn't have a physical affair, she had an emotional affair, but still, nonetheless, I pushed her. And so what I would do for 3 months, I would when she wasn't talking to me, I would write things on the mirror for her bedroom or bathroom. I'd write love notes or scripture verses, and then sometimes I'd write her letters. Sometimes I'd call her. She'd pick up, but then it was dead silence, and it was like that way for 3 months. But I persevered because I knew what I was going to do because God told me to take responsibility. He told me to own it, to fight, to don't give up. And so I developed a skill set to be able to say, okay, here's what we need to do here. I'm not trying, now get this. This is so important. Our goal in life, my role in life for Tara is to, it says to in Ephesians 5:25, to love her as Christ loved the church, not to fix her, not to change her, not to, if she can respond to me, well, no, if she can do my physical touch or whatever the love language is, well, then I'll be nice to her. No, no, it's about me. And when I got that revelation, it has to be about me, my personal development, because I can only control what I can control. And so I can't control my wife. I can't change my wife. I can't fix my wife. Crisis, leads to different thinking. And so that's what most guys are in. Until there's crisis, they won't take the steps or learn the skill sets to be able to connect with their wife. Let me give you an example. Most of us will work. When I worked at a Fortune top 13 company, we had a system that in order for you to get paid, you had to log in. Even executive, you had to log in. You had to uh, identify the work code correctly, the vacation code correctly, the time off correctly, whatever, so that you could get paid. So I had to learn how to log in. I had to learn how to navigate the system. Certainly, it was an easier system, but I had to have that skill set, or I wasn't going to get paid, which is what the goal was. And see, no one teaches this stuff in high school or in college, anywhere. No one knows how do you have you ever taken a class, Jeff, where it says, how do you connect with your wife? There is no such thing.
No.
There is no such thing. Like maybe a psychology, maybe we may learn about the different sexes, but they don't learn the verbiage. They don't learn how to talk to their spouse. So, because of that, this is what the great gap is. We don't have not learned the skill set, and the skill set is like this. It's an example I like to give with my youngest son. He's dating a gal from South Korea. So they've been dating about 4 years. So he has learned Korean. Why did he learn Korean? Is so that he can speak her language, so he can express love to her in a language that she resonates with. And that's what we do. When I'm
Hmm.
speaking English, Tara's hearing Yiddish because she's a different person. She has different experiences. She has different personality. She has different trauma in her life. So when I'm speaking English, she's hearing Yiddish. If I keep speaking English and she's hearing Yiddish, are we going to connect? Not going to happen. And that's all we're doing. Thankfully, it's not as hard as Korean, like my son, but it's a particular verbiage, it's a particular language. The Bible talks about in Proverbs 18:21 that the power of death and life are in the tongue. So when I don't learn my wife's language, I'm not only going to not connect with her, it's not going to work for her, not going to work for us. I'm speaking death over her. Now
Hmm.
that may seem harsh, but 1 and 2 marriages are ending in divorce, and then there's a slew in our estimation, up to 70% of the church are unhappy in their marriage because of this issue. We're not able to connect and learn a language that the other person can resonate with. And so when I learned that tactic, when I learned that skill set, let me give you another example. One of the skill sets. Okay, so as you can tell, I'm high energy. I have lots of energy. I get up at 4 or 5 in the morning. I have these great ideas, and Tara and I are in business together. If I come to her and I say things of business before she has her cup of coffee, before she wakes up, this is about pace. So if I come at her with all this energy and hey, I had this great idea, the marriage revelation, we're gonna get this customer, yeah, this is what we're gonna. If I do that, it's not, guys, it's not gonna work out well for me. It's not. I have to slow down. I have to understand. And so, just in that simple illustration, has really made a difference in our life because I'm not ruining her whole day because I don't understand her. I understand that she needs now, to slow down. She's more reserved. So I slow down. I talk. How was your morning? Did you have any wicked dreams last night? What did you think about? Did you sleep well? So when I ask her those things rather than a to-do list, how you feeling list, then it goes well. Now Tara is a task once she wakes up, she's task oriented. But in the morning, she's people oriented for sure.
Man, yeah. I'm thinking, I'm processing this my own self. I'm like, I'm not speaking the language.
Mm,
Man, you said so much, Chris. Um, I got to say a couple things. So,
yeah.
for some reason, right about the year 10 mark too, is me and my wife also went kind of through,
Mm,
um, wow, just a real impasse, right? That
yeah.
we could not overcome. And I'm sitting there telling her stuff like as plain and logical as, you said
Yeah.
logical earlier, as I possibly could. And it was just not getting through, still turning into a fight. And then she's trying to tell me her stuff. And it's like, uh, we did come to a crisis. And so it was like, that's where I was willing to put money into like paying a guy like you. And we
Mhm.
both got counselors. And then, inadvertently we did that. I don't know if someone told us to do that, but that was really good. But we did get a marriage coach after all that, that kind of like,
Yeah.
I say, brought it together. But
Mhm.
so I totally agree with that. Like that. And I almost think that you just can't even do it yourself. When I look back at that time, I'm like, I was telling her exactly the truth. I was like, we can work this out. Like, just listen to what I'm saying. And it's like, for whatever reason, that just
Yeah.
didn't work. Wasn't, there was too much hurts and things that were going on. And so
Yeah.
I really value, people that have like a ministry like yours that will sit in
Mhm.
that seat, help people get through it. Um, I, I almost feel like you just can't do it yourself, to
Yeah.
be honest.
No, you're right. I couldn't do it myself. And
Yeah.
so none of us can do it yourself because we get trapped in these four walls. And I'm looking at my studio here, and because a coach, let me liken it to Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, if he had something wrong with his stance on his free throw or his elbow was out a little bit, you know, but a coach can oversee things. They can see things that we can't because now hear this, because we're in the middle of it. When we're in the middle of doing life, we're in the middle of trying to fix something because that nature, men are fixers. Have you guys ever seen the video Nail in the Head, where this lady has a nail in her head, and she's like, "You're always trying to fix me. Look, if you just remove the nail," and she's like, "No, that's not it. I just want you to listen." So, and that's what happens to a lot of couples is that it's being able to listen and hear. So often we try to we try to prove our point or we try to get our point across, and that is not what we're trying to do in communication. This is the skill sets that we teach, because you're right. When a coach or a mentor or someone can oversee what's real, look down what's really going on, because they've been there, done that, and they've wore the t-shirt to prove it, as Les Brown would say. And so when we go to conversations trying to I just want to express my feelings. I just want to express, what's going on here. Here's what I think, how we can solve the problem. Get this. That's not the goal of communication.
Wow.
The goal of communication is for me to understand Tara. I'll get my turn, maybe, maybe not. My thing here is I want to hear what Tara is saying, and then ask clarifying questions, and then ask, really, what did you mean by that? Tell me more about that, so that you can be sure what they're saying. And I always go to Tara with two different questions, and here they are. Number one, is this a time for listening, or is this a time to solve a problem? Because if this is time for listening, then I'm just going to shut up and listen. Because sometimes, a lot of times, they just want to process it. They just need the time to air out and think through it. They think out loud, and so as they talk through it, they'll get ideas. Oh, I know how to handle this. Sometimes they're going to come to me, or my wife will come to me and say, "This is a time to let's solve a problem." So then it's a different listening ear, if you can say that, that I have, because now I'm listening not just to listen, to hear and console, but now to solve a problem. So now it's game on. Not that I wasn't listening before, but there's a difference between console. I'm listening to console someone or listen and feel what they feel, and I'm listening to solve a problem. It's just different. So that's how we do it. But certainly, we can't do this on our own. And anyone who wants to keep their money in their pocket, let me know how that works out for you. You might. There's two schools of thought. There's going to divorce, or there's going to be unhappiness involved unless you're connecting. But if there isn't, then it's time to get the skill set. You know Harvard did a study over 80 years. I mean, people died by the time this was going on. And Harvard did a study for over 80 years. What is the main point of happiness? How do you get happiness? How do you define happiness? 80%. Now get this, 80% said it wasn't the it wasn't the job, it wasn't the house, it wasn't the car, it was their own personal relationships with those closest to them.
Wow. Relationships.
And because we're not taught this stuff, doesn't it stand the reason that that's where our focus should be? That's where our dollar should be, not in the next gadget, not in the next whatever. If if a car has to fall by the wayside for me to be able to connect with my wife and to, you know, the marriage bed, we know it's undefiled. If not to connect there, then what good is the car? What good is the house? What good is anything if my wife needs a reason for me, for us to be able to connect intimately? I need a place. She needs a reason. If I'm not giving her that reason, that's on me. That is on me. So, you know, blame your wife all they want, but that never got me anywhere. I don't know, for all the couples we coach, that doesn't get anyone anywhere. The Adam syndrome, we call it, is blaming others for my emotional, or my circumstances not to line up to what God wants, because look what they're doing. Look what they're doing. No, we can't fix that. We can only fix ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, going back to when you're talking about money, like I always say with this now, because I literally was, I don't even know, it's too frugal to like do that. Like, why would I pay this guy $100 to? I could do this.
Yeah,
Just wrong mentality. But
yeah.
that Matthew 6:21, like where your treasure is, there your heart will
Mm.
be, right? And so
Oh,
it's,
yeah, that's good.
I think a big clue on what you do care about and love, like,
Mm.
is where you'll put your money. Like, if it's only in you, like in your golfing, your cars, your hobbies, your trips,
Mhm.
and it's not in your wife, or it's to develop you to both of you, or and your children, and your, you said so many good things, but
Yeah,
like then your heart's just out of whack, and you aren't going to be happy even.
yeah.
So, and a couple things. I feel like what you're saying is almost the same as like with children too. The value is
Mm.
communicating. The value is understanding them, not just your wife. And so that
Yeah,
was kind of a light bulb
yeah,
moment when you're saying all this. I'm like, this skill to
yeah.
listen is just so crucial. And this hits me like this is a new podcast, right? I started last year, and it's caused me to have to listen to people like my guests, like you.
Mm,
And I don't know that it's just like this natural skill of mine. Like I know some people are strong in like asking probing questions, but I am not. And so I've had to like learn the skill of interviewing someone. And it sounds a
mm.
lot like that's what I should be doing for
Yes,
my wife is
yes.
I'm just the podcast host, and I have to like get out of her the information. Like I'm trying to
Yeah,
hear, about the marriage revelation.
yeah.
So
Yeah, that's so good. And I would love to talk a little bit about, yes, we're in the marriage space, but here's the deal. And not all the time. We've been in the we also have we teach couples how to connect with their children, because
oh,
here's
that's
the deal.
great.
The marriage children are here, get this. Children are a welcome addition to the family. And what I see so often, like for example, there's a gentleman in one of our classes that we teach who now has has a daughter that wants to go to a particular country, and so, uh, but they need help. They need help. He wants help. He wants to leave, but yet he'll pay thousands of dollars for them to go to this country, Africa, but not on their marriage front. I can guarantee you, 100%. Would ask your children, would they want to go to a missions trip, or they want mom and dad to get along? Because our children, and we can't hide this, we can't fake this. Our children see how we interact. Our children see how, if there's a conflict, our children see if we're ignoring, our children see if we're angry. Obviously, some are more blatant than others, but they see that. We don't think they are. We don't think they're mature enough to understand, but they do. So the first place is the marriage, but the second, that once we work with couples, they say, "Man, this is you've helped us so much. Help us, help us, help our children." And so then we take our their children through what we call a personality assessment to help them understand the words, how God has uniquely wired them. Because everyone, like we have, for example, we have three children. Like this is a real life story. We have three children, and Tara they had a gift wrapping type of certain bazaar at Christmas at one of the schools that they in our neighborhood, and so they wanted us to be able to participate. So Tara eloquently learned this information and knew that all three of our children are all totally different. You couldn't motivate them the exact same way. For our oldest son, hey, we're gonna have fun. There's gonna be here. Here's who's gonna be here. Here we're gonna have fun. It's gonna be a blast. You're gonna love it. He was in. Now, our middle daughter, the one you know, Jeff, Amanda, she's
Yeah.
more results. She had an A minus and she wanted to get an A plus or above, on this 4.5, whatever scale. So, what we said, and this is true, they were going to give extra credit if you showed up. So, what Tara did was say, hey, look, there's going to be extra credit. You can take your A minus to at least an A or an A plus if you join. She was in. I'm all in because I want that. That's what I want. Now our youngest son is again totally different than all the other two. This one is more motivated by facts and figures and being able to be more caring and kind and gentle. So how she was able to motivate him, say, "Man, we really need your expertise and your ability to rap." And he's a really good rapper. He can rap presents like Buzz. So that's how she motivated him. So then he was in. So all three of our kids, she talked totally different to each three of them, each one of them, and was able to then accomplish the goal, which was to get our family to this gift wrapping bazaar. So that's what we're trying to help people understand, that we're all wired. God has uniquely wired each of us. Psalms 139, 13, and 14 says we're fearfully and wonderfully made. I say that the Bible tells us who we are positionally, but Psalm 139, 13, and 14, what we help people to understand is how that is expressed to the world. How am I fearfully and wonderfully made, and how does the world see that? And that's what we work with, is to be able to help first couples and then families, because it's so important for sure.
Well, I mean, you said enough to where I'm like, I think people need to know, like, where do they get a hold of you? Where
Yeah.
should they be looking, Chris, to if
Well,
they want these resources and help?
yeah, the email or the email is support at the marriage revelation, right? So support at the marriage revelation, or you can email me directly, Chris at the marriage revelation. We have a website, eloquently enough and named enough, the marriage revelation. And then we also, for your audience, we have a free gift for everyone who's there. It's called, and it's at the link, and I think it's in your show notes,
Yeah.
themarriagerevelation.com/training. And it's a 4-part series. And this is really going to be breakthrough for a lot of couples. How to turn your arguments into winning conversations. As we have a Facebook group called the Marriage Revelation as well, and we ask some questions. What is the main thing that you want to learn about in this group? And by far, 90% conflict. Conflict. How do I get along with my spouse? And that's what we're going through. How to win, how to turn your arguments into winning conversations. This is the free video series. You'll see me and Tara, and really take me up on that. That's really good.
That's
That's
awesome.
the link there, because we spent all of our lives trying to help people turn winning, how to turn arguments into winning conversations.
That is so good. I mean, you went through all these skills, right? And it was like the third thing I wrote down as a skill was just when you said listen, and I'm like, how am I forgetting to do that? Like, because as soon as you said it, I'm like, I I quit doing that. I knew
Mm,
that at one point, and I
yeah,
tried it sometimes, but I don't see myself doing that recently. So
yeah,
I
yeah. It's
love that
really
you
a
have.
mindset shift, and then realizing that, once I understood that the communication that we have, my goal is not to get my point across, to make sure I'm heard, whatever. It's to be able to understand
Yeah,
what Tara is telling me.
no, it's so
When I
good.
had
So
that mindset shift, that it's not about me.
yeah,
Selfishness is high up on the list of what destroys a lot of marriages, and so if not the highest one, money's up there. But it's being able to have conversations, and you can't have conversation when you're too busy thinking about what you're going to say, proving your point. You're correct, you're wrong. Here's where you're wrong. Here's where you didn't
mm,
get it right. And see, and this is what gets people in trouble a lot. So that's why you've got to take me up on that offer. How to turn
so
arguments
good.
into winning conversations. And part of that's going to be changing the mindset of the communication cycle.
Awesome. All right, everybody, click that link in the show notes. Get the training. Um, it's just like if you were part of a sports team, like any guy, right?
Yeah,
There would always be a coach. Like there's no way you're just showing up and not having a coach. So utilize this free training that Chris is offering. I really appreciate that, Chris.
yeah,
Uh, I think it even to guys that maybe even knew that at one time, like we're not always going to stay sharp. So this is like a checking in, like get some additional training. I think it keeps coming to my mind, like if you are going to get married and you have kids, or you are married and have kids, you need to get people skills, and that's exactly what you're teaching,
yeah,
like how to have good relationships. And that I don't think this is just for your marriage, just for your
yeah,
kids, but that's where you need to learn it first, because it's so important what you're building with your wife, and
yeah,
building a family, building a legacy, and for it to get torn by divorce. And we both know that happens, right? Because people don't have the skills to maintain it, to go through it
yeah,
for whatever reason. And we're not blaming people, it's just the way it is,
yeah.
um
Yeah, we
but
have an acronym called GOAT. You guys have heard of Tom Brady or LeBron
yeah,
or Michael. GOAT, greatest of all time. Well, I've changed the acronym. I've changed it. You want to know what it is? It's GOAT. G stands for God's Word. A or O stands for the opportunity to understand. This is what we're trying to do. A, when we do an assessment, we it's like a relationship blueprint. So Jeff, when you guys were
yeah,
married, you and your wife was married, and the pastor or the clergy was sitting up there marrying you two. Now, if they, what's your wife's name?
Rachel.
Rachel. If your pastor would say, Rachel, here's how Jeff, here's how he restores, here's how he communicates, here's what causes him stress, here's what how he's going to communicate and deal with issues. Here's how he thinks. Okay, here's how he spends money. Now, would that be helpful to Rachel if and be helpful
Oh,
for you if
oh
she knew
yeah.
how? It's like an operation manual, like an operation and instructions how to connect with Jeff. And Jeff,
Oh yeah.
if you were given, here's Rachel's operation blueprint or a relationship blueprint. Here's how she restores. Here's how she communicates. Here's what causes her stress. All of those things. Here's how she spends money. All of those things. How to do everything. If you were given that blueprint, how would that make you feel?
Not just make me feel like we would have navigated like so well, like professional married couple, like
That's right.
because that's all the stuff I didn't know. I had no
Yeah.
idea. I thought she was
So
like me.
yeah, see, that's what we do. We think love is going to make the perfect alignment. But so we have the acronym GOAT, is that when God's word coupled with the opportunity to understand, which is the relationship blueprint that we provide, and it'll give you and apply it, apply the GOAT, God's word, and apply the understanding. then you'll get T, the transformation. It's a
That's
very
good.
simple framework. It's tried and true. Thousands of couples have been through this program, and I'm telling you, it's it'll work. It's worked for others. It'll work for you. It's worked for me. And if we didn't get the breakthrough in it, we wouldn't be able to do it for sure.
Man,
So,
that is I appreciate you sharing that. That's so good. I know you touched on like how you like just went with your career, right? And it's like
mhm,
you kind of almost like the career got out of place in one sense that it
yeah,
consumed too much. And you didn't, and at the same time, you didn't have the skills that you have today, you
mhm,
know, for your wife. And so, a lot of people that do listen to this, like this, the more entrepreneurial people, right? And they can do the same thing with business, right? It's so
mhm,
easy to work in
yeah,
your business to earn money, and kind of not forsake, but like subtly value it more than the
yeah,
relationships that you have in your family. And so I appreciate you giving the free resource, um, for our listeners. Um, is there is there something that like I'm pretty I'm always thinking like, hey, what would Jeff like 20 years ago need to hear, right? And what would I want to teach him? And I'm guessing like your training essentially is what you wish you would have known before you got married.
mhm,
Um, but what do you say to people that like they're at that crisis point, right? This isn't
mhm,
like they're there facing it in the
yeah,
eyes. She's leaving, he's something, or maybe they just split. Like,
mhm.
can you bring some encouragement? What would you say
Yeah.
to people like that?
Well,
Yeah.
we know that with God, all things are possible, and we know,
Yeah.
you know, the focus has got to be individual rather than trying to fix or heal or whatever. Because when we learn those personal development skills, we will be the person that the other person becomes attracted to again, to fall in love with again. And then we've had couples who were divorced and got this information about how to connect a relationship blueprint. And so once they got that, then they were remarried and lived not happily ever after because that's a misnomer. But now they have the tools to be able to navigate when life comes at us, and life will. Marriage will come at us. Still comes at me and Tara, but we now have the skill set and the tools to be able to navigate the things. One of the things for me when I was just a blind guide. You know, I was a church pastor and a leader in the church, but I was one man behind closed doors, and another man in front of the crowd, and so that caught me. So my word of encouragement for other people is just to come out, be real in all areas, and be able to now say, okay, here are my issues. Here's what I'm bringing. Here are the issues I'm going to work on, and we're all on a journey, Jeff. It's okay. It's okay as long as there's a lot of grace, there's a lot of forgiveness in the other person, as long as they know that your heart is for them and not against them.
Mm.
A lot of couples, they and I could go on and on. A lot of couples, you know, we fight each other, and we have a real enemy out there who does not want us. He comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And so when we fight each other, when we stop fighting each other and start to complete, then that commitment is the safety net. Like in a high wire act, when someone's practicing for a high wire act, there's always a safety net for them to fall down, boom, and they bounce off of it. That's what commitment is.
Mm.
Marriage should be a sacred place for people to be able to heal, to be able to grow. Like suffice it to say, I'm just a grown man in a little boy's body. And that's how most men are. That's how most women are.
Wow.
Because the fact we've had so much trauma, so many issues come up, so much hurt in between me and Tara that we just marriage has got to be the place for people to heal and the people to communicate. If we can't do it there, where are we going to go?
Wow.
It's just that's why this is so important to be able to get this right. It has to be the area. Do you know, Jeff, that the very first covenant that God made with man was between Adam and Eve, the marriage unit?
Hmm.
Before Abraham, before David, before Noah, uh, it had to have been. It was the marriage unit because it was the greatest small group. It was the most intimate. Adam and Eve. And that's how the core of society is. And this is why we're under attack. I mean, the couples that we're teaching are under attack because Satan does not want this to survive. He wants to, he wants to deceive, he wants to kill, till, steal, and destroy. And he does that through the lies that we believe. And that biggest lie is that their partner is the enemy. We don't think it like, oh, that's you're the enemy, but we approach it like that. Like they're the enemy, they're the other team. No, we're on the same team.
Man, that's so good. I've never even heard that before, but you're
Yeah.
right. That would have been the first covenant. That's awesome. I'm glad you brought up commitment too,
Yeah.
because I think about when me and my wife were coming to our crisis, and it was like I knew like I'm either going to go live with my parents, but I'm still committed to like I just need to get out of the situation,
Yeah.
and separate to kind of regroup. And we didn't have to get that far, thankfully. Um, but I'm glad you said that commitment. Marriage should be a commitment,
Yeah.
and if that's true, you should like assess like is there lies that I'm believing? Like am I targeting my spouse as the problem when we know like the Bible says we wrestle against,
Mhm.
um, powers, principalities, things that it's not people, right? There's other
Yeah.
things trying to come against what you're building. Yeah, and it seems like in the Bible that devil's always coming against marriage. He's trying to
Yeah.
divide and conquer because yeah, divided will fall, but if together, the marriage union, like if the wife, she's such a helpmate to the husband and he's loving and serving her, like that's almost
Yeah.
unstoppable. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, that's good you said that because I we have couples that we teach at our church, and that's what the illustration is that when I can just get this concept, like Tara's a different person, she has different strengths, different abilities, and I'm a different person, I have different strengths, different abilities, and when we can come together, we are unstoppable. But so many couples are like, ah, man, I don't understand. You're wrong. And so we're fighting each other. Like, oh, no, that's not how it's supposed to be. God wants us to complete, not compete.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you're fighting here, like you're not walking and you can accomplish so much more as it's
Yeah.
because there's something about your life that is a ministry, like or call it what you will. It's our Christian term for it, but like
Yeah.
you should be doing something as a couple that
Yeah.
helps other people, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call that. Like you're
Yeah.
making the world a better place, and boom, you start fighting within. Dude, you're not going anywhere. You're not
Yeah.
walking in what is God really has for you, um,
Yeah.
or life has for you. Uh, I'm glad you brought up like being real. Like, and I think that's something that men struggle with. Everybody
Yeah.
can. And I had just read this morning Proverbs. I was looking this up, 28:13, and it was he who conceals his like transgressions will not prosper.
Mm.
But he who confesses and forsakes them, he will find compassion. Um, and that just even leads to what like James I think 5 says, where like confess your sin so you can like be healed from it and move
Mhm.
on. Like some part of your marriage, like you're part of the problem, like the things you've said and that you've done towards your wife,
Mhm.
you did it, and you
Yeah.
have to and we talked about, or you talked about way earlier, taking ownership of that, like, and I think that accountability is what maybe men need to like give each other. Like,
Yeah.
dude, if your buddy is coming saying, "Oh man, we're heading to divorce," hey, it's like, well, what part did you cause? I mean, you caused part of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Exactly.
So how are you fixing it? Like,
Yeah.
oh, just talking to her. That's all you're doing to fix it. You're not putting any money into this. You're not putting, you
Yeah.
know, getting a mentor in this. Like, no, dude, you need to. You said fight earlier, and
Yeah.
there's something in us, man, that like, dude, you would go fight to the death to maybe defend your country or defend some person maybe you see at the park getting, killed or something.
Yeah.
But just this at home precious woman that is bearing your children, that has served you, that has been with you, you're not fighting for her? Like, that how is that how
Yeah.
do we get to that point, right? Y
That's so good. Yeah. Well, we have a saying too, he who is the most vulnerable gets the most breakthrough.
Ooh, that's
So
good.
the more vulnerable that I can become with Tara and with others, then the more breakthrough I get, which means that I'll be able to connect with my with Tara. Will be able to connect with my children because I'll be honest, I didn't have this skill set. I didn't
Yeah.
know what it was. Never exemplified or never taught me. That wasn't their fault. It was my fault. But so now that's why I'm on this mission to be able to help guys understand that it's okay to want to hunt and to fish and to all that, but not at the sacrifice where we can't understand our wives. Well, that's
Mm.
just the way I am. I've been told so many times, I can't tell you, that, oh, relationships are a chick thing. What do you mean? Well, no, the relationships are a girl thing. I'm a man. I fish, I hunt. And so, okay, bro, how's that working out for you? Does your wife like you? So, what I like to say is that relationships are a human thing,
Yeah.
not a man or not a woman thing. It's a human thing. And so, we can't sacrifice our relationships on the altar of success, like what I did, and think that, well, I'm gonna be a macho, I'm gonna do jujitsu, I'm gonna be this guy who drives a truck. Sure, you can do all that, but please, not at the expense of your family, of showing you who I gotta be, who I am. That's how God made me. And that's what you like, so
Well
to
well,
connect.
let's call that out real quick. Like, to in reality, that's like a boy, like a selfish, immature boy mentality is what you're saying. But you're
Yeah,
in a 40-year-old man's body with, you got a beard, you got plaid, hunting stuff. But it's like, yeah, but inside you're acting like a selfish boy.
yeah. And
And we
that's
need
really
to
what we really all are at
yeah,
times until we allow God to say, okay, touch that piece of my heart.
yeah,
Touch this piece. Help me to be a better husband, a better father, a better grandfather now that I'm that. Like, how do I do all that? Well, it comes from surrendering to the King of Kings. It comes from the ability to, God, give me the skill sets, and He will. And that's what He did for us. He gave us the skill sets. I understood the word. I understood. I was a pastor, but I didn't know how to apply it. And that's what we help with is how do you apply the word of God? When it says to honor more, to trust more, to love more, how do you actually do that? And what we do is we help people with a framework of being able to speak the words that will communicate love to the other person. Oh, it's easy for me to speak, you know, like English to Yiddish when Tara's hearing Yiddish, but it's harder for me to learn Yiddish, but yet that's what God has called me to do.
yeah,
God wants me to learn a language that resonates with her so we can connect, so we can quit fighting each other because that's what the devil wants. The devil wants us to well, let's fight each other. That's as good as it's going to get. That's where we're going to live a level of mediocrity because that's the way it's designed because we're just going to argue. No, it doesn't have to be that way. Well, but if you want it that way, you can. And just hope to God that your wife doesn't leave you.
wow, that's so good. And I gotta address that you said, like who confesses the most or something, like gets the most breakthrough, like
Yeah, he was the most vulnerable, gets the most break.
vulnerable. There you go. And so I think that's a struggle too. Like, sometimes as men, we gotta like internal. No, we gotta be strong. Like, we can't
Yeah.
show the vulnerability. I gotta be the anchor, and
Mm.
um, but I I think scripture, I think God really flips the world upside down and says, actually, you know what? If you just do what I say, so much more power will happen in your person, if you
Yeah.
just do what I say. And he clearly teaches, no, it's confession. You took part in it. You have a problem. You're part of the problem. So
Mhm.
please get it out there
Yeah.
and address it. Take full ownership of it. And so, anyways, I'm really glad you brought that up too.
Yeah.
So that's the two biggest things I learned today. Okay, confess and listen. Now, like,
Yeah.
you're
There you
part of the
go.
problem. So,
Yeah.
oh, Chris, it's been so good, just hearing what your message is, and
Mm.
I'm really encouraged by it. And I know a lot of people would be encouraged by, taking you up on the free training or just connecting with you guys to get the coaching. Are you guys out in churches already? Or like, what if pastors are listening to this and they're like, well, our church doesn't have that. So
Yeah.
what's on the
Yeah, we
horizon here?
absolutely are taking this to wherever we have it. We're working on a training manual because that's really what we're doing. We're training people how to have healthy marriages, and so we're able to speak and we're able to deliver this because we're pastors. Our city reached our church locally is about 3,000 people, and that's where we go. But it's a ministry born out of that church, and where we're combining because just a real brief one of our pastors went to, we have a marriage getaway to Cancun, Mexico. And we were full. We had already sold it all, but he says, man, there's something the Lord's all over this. I got to get there. I got to get there. And he saw what we did. And he said, I've got to have this. This church has got to have this. This is going to be the breakthrough. This is the breakthrough that our church needs. And so that's why. So for 6 weeks intensive, we trained leaders. Now we're training another group, and it's going to be a cornerstone type of curriculum that we're creating for this church, along with freedom, to be able to say, okay, because churches, if you don't have a strong marriage, if you're a pastor out there, if you don't have a strong marriage ministry, it's going to be hard to grow
Yeah.
because this is how God has designed it. Adam and Eve, the first union, and so this is the core of society. So if we don't try to help the core of society, then all bets are off. All bets are off.
Mm,
But all big churches that I know who will, you know, want this curriculum because certainly that's what we want to do. So if you're a pastor out there, by all means, reach out to us. We have another company. It's called Marriage Insights Institute. That's our church legacy, our church initiative. But still, email me at Chris at the Marriage Revelation, and I'll be able to connect you to what we're doing and to be able to help the churches because and help churches grow, but more importantly help marriages get along, help
yeah.
quit the facade that you know so many so oftentimes it's like, oh they'll be fighting on the church, the couples will be fighting on the way to church, and then they'll get to the gate, praise the Lord.
Yeah.
Like, you're just about
Get,
ready to punch your wife out a second ago, bro. And so once we get that realness,
hmm,
because that's where I was at.
yeah.
So none of these things I've said here is anything that I have not done, said, done or said myself. Uh, so uh, so we speak out of experience, and so the Bible does talk about, you want to learn from people with experience. You don't have to go through what me and Tara went through in order to do. This is why there's the Old Testament, why the stories are there, is to learn, to grow. We don't have to make the same mistake that David
Yeah.
made. And that's why that whole series is in there about Bathsheba. So we don't have to make that same mistake. So that's what we're trying to help people do. Shorten the gap so they don't have to make these mistakes that we've made.
That's so good. That's wisdom right there.
Yeah.
Like learning a skill from someone else so that you're not learning all the bumps and lumps from
Yeah.
the hard way doing it yourself. Like that's,
Yeah.
and and there's some things you got to learn that way, but maybe you
Yeah.
don't risk your marriage like that. Is,
Yeah.
don't in your family. Cause that's quite an investment that we have. And you
Yeah.
have a lot to lose. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm sure, yeah, most people that are divorced, except for maybe for cases of abuse, like more than likely, you
Yeah.
know, it'd been better if you stayed in that and worked through it.
Yeah.
But wherever you're at now, regroup, get the skills that you need to have so that you can do
Yeah.
it better the next
Yeah.
time. So,
That's
all
right.
right, Chris. Well, I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you brought this message and you offered the training for our audience. And so, with that, people, fathers, put the work in today. In your faith, family, finances, and fitness. Just do little steps. Even it's a little step to sign up for Chris's training, and it's like, how much of an impact can that have for the future with your wife and with your kids? And so, with that, put the work in. So in a year from now, you're thanking
Mhm.
yourself saying, I'm so glad I did that. And I'm
Yeah.
glad where my family's at. I'm glad I saved my marriage. I'm glad I'm have a better relationship with my kids. So with that, we'll see you guys all on the next one.